Good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's filtered webinar. It's Get Started with Office 365. Joining me today to present the webinar is Filtered IT trainer Deb Ashby. She'll be taking you through all of the key features and functions in Office 365, helping you to increase proficiency and productivity in this widely used software package. Before I pass the controls over to Deb, just a quick bit of housekeeping. Firstly, if you're new to Filtered, we're an online training provider specialising in the use of adaptive technologies to personalise content, accelerating learning and reducing training time. Check out filtered.com to see our range of courses which can train your staff in key business and software skills, and our other solutions including creating bespoke training content for your company. Follow us on Twitter with #FilteredWebinar to get updates, feedback about the webinars, or send us any questions you have. If you have any questions for Deb during the webinar, please submit them into the question pane during the webinar. We'll be taking a short break at the halfway point to answer a handful of them, and then again at the end of the session. Depending on how many we receive, we may not be able to go through all of them, so if we don't manage to field your question, please do email us at hello@filtered.com after the webinar if we don't get around to yours. That's all from me now, so it gives me great pleasure to hand you over to Deb to start today's webinar. Over to you, Deb.
Thanks, Alan. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar on getting started with Office 365. As Alan said, my name's Deborah Ashby. I'm the IT trainer at Filtered. What my role basically consists of is I'm in charge of all the Microsoft courses. So I do updates to those courses. I run sessions like this for you lovely people, and just make sure that everything's up to date with regards to our Microsoft sessions. So I'm going to be hosting your session today, and the format of this session, we're going to have a few PowerPoint slides at the beginning, but believe me, it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. The most of the session is going to be live demos, so we'll be going through into Office 365, taking a look at all the different things that you can do in there. I am going to move through the content fairly quickly, and if I just pull up the next slide, sorry, just the next one, you can see the agenda there. So we have quite a few items to cover on the agenda today. So I'm going to be moving through the content reasonably quickly. I do recommend that you write notes as we go through, but if I am going a little bit too quick, this session is being recorded and that will be sent to you afterwards so that you can go back and review anything that you need to. So if we just briefly run down the agenda so you know what we've got in store for you today. So we're going to first answer the question, what is Office 365? As I've travelled around the country quite a lot over the last year training Office 365, one of the biggest questions we find is that people in general don't know what Office 365 is. So we're going to make sure that you have a good understanding of that. So we're going to talk about the licensing versus the subscription model. And we're then going to jump into the Office 365 portal. So I'm going to show you how you install Office 365 across multiple devices. I'm going to take a look at how you navigate around the portal. Don't worry if you're not sure what the portal is. I am going to explain that before we get to this part. I'm going to show you how you access all of your Office applications online as well, and how you store documents in the cloud. So for Microsoft, their cloud storage system is called OneDrive for Business. From there, we're going to take a look at how you use OneDrive to share your documents with your colleagues, and how you can do something called co-authoring, which is real-time updates, live updates to the same document. We're going to take a look at version control, and also I'm going to very briefly touch on SharePoint team sites as well, just to make sure that you understand the difference between OneDrive, OneDrive for Business and SharePoint, because they are fairly similar and it's quite easy to confuse them. And then at the end of the session, we're going to take a very brief look at Office Delve, and also something which you may not have heard of before, a little application called Microsoft Sway. Now, Sway is available to you through the Office 365 portal, and it's a really nice little application which you can use to create really engaging presentations. It's a nice alternative to using PowerPoint. So that's our agenda for today, so quite a lot on there. So without further ado, let's jump into our first slide. So as I said, the first question which we're going to throw out there is, what is Office 365? And that's the reaction I pretty much get whenever I ask anybody that question. And I think the confusion comes from historically in the past, what we're all used to with our Microsoft products is for example, our Word, our Excel, our PowerPoint, we're used to having versions of that software on our PC. So we might have downloaded or we might buy Office 2010, Office 2013, Office 2016, and we're used to that structure of having different versions and upgrading to the next version when the time comes. Then suddenly a couple of years ago what got thrown into mix was this Office 365, and people were kind of unsure exactly what that was, and really the way that you need to think about it is it's just really a brand name. So it's also a move away from the licensed way of doing software. So for example, Microsoft have now moved to a subscription-based system. And what we mean by that is, again, in the past, if you wanted to purchase Office, for example, so say you went out to a store, you bought a new laptop, and then you wanted to install Microsoft Office, you would have to purchase a license for Microsoft Office. You could then install that software onto your laptop or onto your PC, and then that's yours to keep, but you can only really put it on one device. What Microsoft have now done is they've moved away from that model and they've gone towards a subscription-based system. So instead of actually buying the software, you're essentially renting the software from Microsoft. So you buy a subscription package, and of course there are numerous different packages that you can buy. So it depends whether you are a home user or a business user. Your organization might have purchased business subscriptions. And essentially, as I said, you're renting that software. So you don't officially own it technically, but there are a few advantages to the subscription based. So a moment, with one subscription you get 5 installations of Office per user across multiple devices. So if you have purchased a subscription, you then have the opportunity to download Office 5 times across any of your devices. So again, if you work in an office and you have a business subscription, you could then install Office at home if you wanted to across 5 of your different devices. So if you want to put it onto your personal PC, maybe you have a Mac at home, you can also put Office on your Mac. If you have a tablet or a phone device, you can put Office across all of those up to 5 times. That's a really, really nice feature that Office 365 has, and we are going to take a look at how you do that install. Along with that, you will also get the full versions of all the modern desktop applications. So what we mean by that is full versions of 2013 or 2016, depending on which one you're purchasing, of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of those Microsoft applications that we know and love. And that is the full versions of those that comes with your download. And you also get access to the Office 365 portal, and this is what we're going to focus mainly on today, because this is going to be something which you probably haven't seen before if you are new to Office 365. There's now an online portal which will allow you to basically work on the go. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You could be in Brazil, and it would be lovely if we were all in Brazil right now, in an internet cafe. As long as you've got internet access and a browser, you can access Office 365, and you can access your email, your calendar, and all of your documents as long as they're saved into the cloud. So it's just a really nice way of being able to work in a mobile environment, essentially. So this is what we're going to focus on, looking at that Office 365 portal and the different things that you can do in there. For companies, it's great because it does reduce costs if they install Office 365. Because it's all hosted by Microsoft, it means that companies aren't having to host the applications themselves, so that reduces costs, and it's also a little bit cheaper for a subscription as it would be to buy the software for each individual user. Another advantage is the automatic updates. There's none of this when Microsoft changes or upgrades to the next version. If you have a subscription, you will automatically receive that update, so your software is always going to be up to date. You don't have to go out and buy a whole new version of Office when the next version is released, which is also really nice. And then finally, it does have a really nice installation, easy installation. So users are pretty much self-sufficient. Again, I'm going to show you how to install it. It takes a matter of minutes to install all of the Office applications on your PC. So again, that cuts down on help desk time, IT costs, things like that. So lots of advantages for the subscription-based system. So let's jump in and start taking a look at the Office 365 online portal. As I said, it is a flexible mobile environment, so you can work anywhere, anytime. So let's come out of my slides, and we're going to jump into the Office 365 portal. So if you just open up an internet browser, and as I said, you can do this and you can access all of your email, all of your files from anywhere as long as you have an active internet connection and a browser. You can use any browser. I'm using Chrome today, but you could be using Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox. It works on all of them. And all you need to do is type in www.office.com. And that will take you to the office.com homepage, and you'll see in the top corner here there is a sign in button, so you will be required to sign in. And you'll see here, if it's the first time that you're signing in, it will just come up with empty fields asking you to enter in your email address and your password. Because I've signed in previously, it's coming up with mine. So you can see there's my email address, and my password's already been pre-populated. Now, depending on which version of Office 365 you're using will depend on which email address you use. So for example, if you're using it in a business environment, it will be your work email address and your work password. If you are a home user, then it's probably going to be your home email address, whatever you use to register to download the software. So I'm just going to click sign in to go into my portal. Alright, so this is what the portal looks like. Very kind of clean interface, quite nice to look at, and you'll get a lovely little message, very Microsoft, good afternoon, and then my name in there. If we take a look at the navigation bar running across the top, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is if you just glance your eyes up to the top left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a little grid icon there. I call this the waffle. I have no idea if that's the technical name. I don't think it is. I think most people would refer to it as the application launcher, but I remember it best as the waffle because that's what it looks like. And if we click that, we then have access to all these different tiles. This is where all of our applications essentially live, and I can switch between any of my applications just by clicking on one of the different colored tiles. And again, you might find that you don't have quite as many tiles in there as I do. Again, what you see in there really depends on the subscription that you've purchased, so which one of the different packages that you've purchased. But for the most part, it should look fairly similar. Now what we have in here are online versions of all of our applications. So you'll see in a moment when we jump into something like email, it's not going to look exactly like the full version of Outlook which you might have on your PC. It is what we call a slimmed down version, an online version of all of your applications. So there are a few changes. The idea of this portal is that you are able to work and do the basics such as send emails, view emails, attach documents, all of the basic things that you might want to do when you're out of the office. Okay, so if you want to do something that was particularly advanced or complex, then you may find that you don't have the option to do it in the online version. But for the most part, you can do most things within here. Now we are going to jump into one of those applications in a moment, but I just want to highlight something else to you. On the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that we have a little cog icon, and this is where all your settings for Office 365 live. So you can see down there, when I click on that cog, I now have access to change some of my overall Office 365 settings. So I can choose to set a theme, that's always fun, change the color of your background if you want to, and you must remember to click Save at the bottom there. I can do things such as set my start page as well. So by default, when I log into the Office 365 portal, it's going to take me to this screen that I see here. However, if I wanted it to go straight into my email or straight into my calendar, I could select one of those from that drop down and just select it to log straight into that start page when I go in. I can customize what notifications I'd like to receive, and if I wanted to change my portal password, I can also do that from here as well. And if I really wanted to go in and start modifying and setting up my settings, which I kind of would recommend that you do go into here and have a look at your overall Office 365 settings, just so that everything's set up as you like it, you'll see underneath My App Settings you have, it says Office 365, and that will take you into some other settings that you can change, so you have more options within there as well. So again, I would encourage you just to have a little look through those settings, see the different things that you can do. While we're on this page, one thing that I think is quite useful is if you click on Install Status, you can see here, this is where it will show you how many times you've installed Office on your devices. So you know if you've used up your 5 installations as of yet. So you can see here it's showing me that I have Office installed on 3 different devices currently. Okay, so that's how you can keep track of your installs. And if, for example, you wanted to remove one of those installs, so maybe you get a new PC and you want to transfer it across, you can just click deactivate to take that install off as well. So quite nice and easy to manage that. Now from here, to jump back to that main home screen, if I just click on the Office 365 logo, that's going to take me back. Okay, so really nice and simple. And just click on that cog just to close up those settings again. All right, so I keep mentioning the installs of Office, and the eagle-eyed amongst you might have seen just below where my mouse currently is, I do have a button that says Install Office 2016, and this is where you would come if you wanted to install the full versions of Office onto whichever device you're currently using. So there is also another little link underneath that says Other Installs, so if you click that, that will take you across to another page here, and this is where you can go if you want to install on a phone or a tablet device. You can then select your tablet or your phone device from here, and it will walk you through the process of installing on a phone or a tablet. If you're just doing a straight install onto a Mac or onto a PC, then you can just click on that Install Office 2016 button. If you are using a Mac, incidentally, it installs absolutely fine. It will recognize that you are using a Mac, and it will install the relevant version of Office, so Office for Mac as opposed to the Windows version. So really nice and simple. As I said, everybody should be able to do this. I've done it loads of times. I don't envisage any of you having too many problems with that if you need to do it. So 5 installs of Office. All right. Now this home page, as we scroll down again, there is a search button at the top here. I could use this to search for documents, and again, if I scroll down a little bit further, it's showing me documents that I recently accessed. So these are documents that are saved into OneDrive, which we're going to discuss in quite a lot of detail in a moment. So I can see my recent documents, and if I want to look for something in OneDrive, I could search directly from the home screen of the portal, which again is just a nice quick way to be able to access and pull up your documents really, really quickly. However, let's click back on our waffle in the top corner. The first thing I want to show you is just a few little things which might be new for you in the email side of the portal. So let's click on the Mail tile. Okay. So as I said, this is now the online version of my Mail account. So as you can see, for those of you who are Outlook users, you can see it does look very different to the Outlook that you're probably used to using. It's an online, slimmed down version, but I can pretty much do everything that I might need to do from here. So I can create new emails by clicking on the New button. I can read emails, obviously. I can reply. I have my little buttons just here. Everything pretty much straightforward in here. So I've got my reply and my reply to all buttons over at the side. So you can do all kinds of things like that, and you'll see once I've clicked on an email, I now have additional options appearing in the navigation bar at the top here. So I can do things like move to folders, all of those kinds of things. It is worth noting, just quickly going back to settings again, if we go back up to the cog icon, if I click that again, you'll see now that that's different. So your settings change depending on which part of the portal you're in. So I'm now controlling or looking at all of the settings for my Mail account. So this is where I would come if I want to create an out-of-office reply, so an automatic reply. I can set it from there, which is quite useful. If you're anything like me, if I'm going on holiday, I get way too excited and I always run out that door at 5 o'clock, forget to set my out-of-office. So it's quite useful that I can actually set that from home if I want to with relative ease. So your settings for your Mail live in there. A couple of other things which might be new for you. There is a new feature in this version of Office called Clutter, and people either love this option or they hate it. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't made up my mind yet on clutter, but I'll show you how it works. Now, clutter, you'll see here there is a folder at the side called clutter, which you may or may not have noticed appear. This isn't just in the portal, this is also in the full desktop version of Outlook. So if you've never seen it before, go back and have a look. You might be able to see a clutter folder in your folder list. This is something new, and the idea of it is it's there to help you prioritize your email, essentially. So what clutter does, it's an automated to a certain extent. It does need you to kind of train it to get the most out of it, but what clutter will do is it kind of analyzes your actions. So for example, it analyzes what emails I tend to ignore, what emails I tend to delete, and based on my actions, it will then move certain emails directly into my clutter folder as opposed to keeping them in my inbox. Now, I'm one of those people where I like to have everything in my inbox, and if I want to move it, I like to move it. I'm not so keen on automated programs moving around mail for me, but some people absolutely love it. So, for example, the kind of thing which might get moved to clutter would be I receive an email every week from Microsoft, and it's just telling me latest tips and tricks, and I don't necessarily read it immediately. I would in general kind of leave it for maybe later or when I'm not quite as busy, so that's considered a low priority email by me. So I might ignore it, leave it unread. The next time clutter will move that into the clutter folder because it's something which I want to go back to later. And that's kind of essentially how clutter works. Now, it does occasionally get things a little bit wrong. It does start sending things to clutter which you maybe don't want to go to clutter. So you can also move things out of clutter. So for example, this email that we have in here, if I right-click, I can just move it back to my inbox, and then the application will know next time that you don't want that email from that particular sender sent to clutter. Okay, so you essentially kind of have to train it a little bit for it to work the best. So hopefully that makes sense. That is the clutter feature. Something else which you might not be aware of, and I'm hoping that I've got an email in here which I can demonstrate this on. Just bear with me one second. Yes, I do. Okay. There's something else which was fairly new. I think it was new in the 2013 release, but it seems to be something which people, again, either don't tend to notice or maybe don't understand quite as much how it works, is this little action items. Now, this is part of something called Exchange Online Integrated Applications, which I don't expect you to remember, but there's a number of little kind of mini applications integrated into the Exchange server. So, and these little things will appear in certain emails, and the idea of them is they're there to help you, again, manage and work a little bit more efficiently. So, for example, this email that I'm currently clicked on, you can see I'm viewing it in my reading pane. I have a little button that says Action Items, and again this is something that you'll see not just in the online version but also in the full desktop version of Outlook. When I click on Action Items, it comes up with this: we think we found an action item. So what it's basically done is it reads my email, and you can see in the email, in the text, I've got please find below a document attached for your review. So that's kind of a to-do item, something I need to do. So now Outlook is asking me, do I want to add this into my tasks for follow-up? And I can very quickly do that by clicking on follow-up. So it just means that I don't have to switch to my tasks and then add a new task in. I can do it all in one go because it's picked up this action item. So it can be really, really useful. Let me just see if I've got another one, because they do differ. There's quite a few. There's another one here, but I think that's kind of the same kind of thing. Yeah, so that one is asking me to add things into follow-up as well. You might see in here, it might say suggested meetings. So if somebody sends you an email that has something on the lines of let's catch up at 9 o'clock on Monday, Outlook will pick that up as a suggested meeting, and it will present you with something similar to this and will allow you to add that directly into your calendar from here as well. And there's about 5 or 6 of these different action items. Another one that I find really useful is Bing Maps. So if somebody sends you an email that has maybe an address in it, so maybe you're going to somebody's office and they've sent their address, then it will produce a little map in the email as well, just showing you directions to where that is located. So action items are really useful, so don't ignore them. They are there to help you. So hopefully that's made that a little bit clearer for those of you that have kind of wondered what those little things were appearing in your emails. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I'm not going to linger too long in email. I think it's straightforward enough that most people can kind of get their head around what you need to do in here. You do also have access to your calendar if you're curious, so if you need to schedule events, things like that. Again, if you click on the little waffle, you can jump to your calendar. And again, you have your new buttons, so you can add new appointments, new events, new meetings, so on and so forth. And again, this works in a very, very similar way. So again, just have a little play around, see the kinds of things that you can do in there. You should be able to do everything that you would need to do when you're out of the office. So nice and straightforward. Lovely. Let's move on to talking about documents and how you store documents, because this is where the portal, where I find the portal is really, really useful. I know that in the past where unfortunately I've had to work at home quite a lot at the weekends and things like that, which I'm sure many of us do have to do. In the past, and I'm talking about a few years ago now, it seemed to be quite difficult to be able to access documents without going through these complicated Citrix logins, and sometimes they didn't work, and it was always very complicated trying to get to my documents. Now it's extremely simple. If you save your documents into the cloud, and we're going to talk about the cloud because I know that again that's terminology which tends to put people off a little bit. If you save your documents into the cloud, they are then accessible from wherever you have an internet browser. So I can access a file I created in the office from wherever I am. And we're going to take a look at that. And this is all tied into OneDrive for Business. Now, I do have a slide which I want to show you before we actually get into taking a look at that. Just bear with me. Okay. Now, I'm the first to admit that Microsoft have been a little bit confusing with their terminology with regards to OneDrive. So you've probably heard of OneDrive, but there's actually a few different sort of ways that you can store your documents in the cloud for you to access them. So we have OneDrive, OneDrive for Business, and then there is SharePoint, and all three are different. Okay, so let's discuss each one just so you know the difference between the three of them. Now, OneDrive is storage that's provided with your Office 365 personal account. So if you have a Hotmail account or a live.com account, you will have 1 terabyte of storage with OneDrive. So I have a Hotmail account, and I use this for personal file storage. So for example, every year me and my friend go away on a big holiday, and we like to share our photographs when we come back, so I always upload all of my photographs into OneDrive, and then I give her access to the folder, and we can share photos very simply that way. So this is just for my personal files, and it's tied to my Hotmail account. What we then have is OneDrive for Business, which is slightly different. This is in general what you'll get if you're working at an organization. This is your cloud storage at work, essentially, and it's called OneDrive for Business. Again, 1 terabyte of storage, and it's for your personal work files. So the way you kind of have to think of it is it's just like a regular network drive. So if you're used to, in the past, saving files to a shared network drive, so an S drive or an H drive or something like that, that's what OneDrive for Business essentially is. It's somewhere for you to store your personal work files. An advantage of using this as well is that your files will be available to you offline. So if you were to lose internet connection, for example, you can still access your files, and I'm going to show you how you go about that. Now the third option that we have is SharePoint. Again, something which you've probably heard that terminology tossed around a little bit. But SharePoint is more for team documents. So again, in SharePoint we create what we call team sites, and that's more, you might set up a team site if you and maybe your team are working on a particular project. You might create a project team site on SharePoint and give all of your team members access to it, but it wouldn't be accessible by anybody outside of those team members. So it's more like a kind of locked down team site used for storage of documents and various other things. There's lots of things that you can do with SharePoint. As I said, we're not going to go too much into that today. We're just briefly going to touch on the kinds of things that you can do with it. So those are the three differences. OneDrive for personal, OneDrive for business is your personal work files, and SharePoint would be more for team files when you're at work. Now what we're going to focus on today is OneDrive for business. It does work very similar to OneDrive, so if we've got people who are mainly using Office 365 at home, it's not going to be that much different for you. I'm pretty sure you can work out what we're doing based on OneDrive for business. So let's minimize that down. Now, just to illustrate how this works to you, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Word and I'm going to open up the full version of Word on my PC. And I'm using Word 2016 if you're curious, and we're going to create a document. Then what we're going to do is we're going to save it into the cloud, and I'm going to show you how you would access that if you were out of the office, how you would make changes to it, so on and so forth. So I've got a blank document here, and as quick as you like, we're going to add in 10 paragraphs of text just by putting in a nice little bit of code there. Okay, so that's my document, and I'm very quickly just going to save that document up into the cloud. So I'm going to click on File, and I'm going to click on Save As, and this is where we come across a really, really important point relating to OneDrive. So you can see in here, when I click on Save As, I have access to all three of those things we were just talking about. So I have access to save into my OneDrive Personal, which is linked to my Hotmail account. I have access to save into my OneDrive for Business, and I have access to save into SharePoint if I wanted to. That's the difference between these three just here. So I can choose any of those and save. So if I click on, I'm going to save it into this one just here. And I'm going to save it into training demo files, and you can see here I've got a little bit of a solar system theme going on, so we'll just go along those lines and we'll save this one as mars.doc and we'll click save. And that is now saving up into the cloud. Now in order for me to be able to do that, there's something called synchronization, which is really important that you do this in order to be able to save documents in the way that I've just showed you. If I just go to File Explorer, which hopefully most of you will be familiar with, this is where you come, or where you would normally come to see all of your, let me just make that a bit bigger, to see all of your files. This is where I could come if I was looking for files I've got stored on my desktop, in my documents, or if you're used to having network drives, your network drives would normally be listed in here as well. And you'll see that in here, this is where I have OneDrive listed, OneDrive for Business, so on and so forth. Now by default, if it's the first time that you're using OneDrive, you won't have these in File Explorer. You need to add these in order for them to be accessible through here, and it's not until you add those in that you'll be able to save documents. They won't be available through File and Save As unless you have those folders synchronized across to your File Explorer. I'm going to show you very quickly how you would do that. So let's go back to our portal. And I'm going to click on the waffle, and again I'm going to click on the OneDrive tile just here. So you must do this through the portal first of all. In order to do the synchronization, it's done through the portal. So I'm going to click on OneDrive. And what you'll see is the first time that you go into OneDrive, you'll see here there is a sync button in the top navigation bar. You want to click on sync, and what that will do is it will synchronize all of your folders. It creates a link between the portal and File Explorer on your desktop, and it will add your OneDrive for Business into File Explorer. So if you click on sync, and there's a new version available which is just downloading. Just bear with me 1 second while that installs. Okay, looks like I'm going to have to run something. It doesn't matter too much. All I really wanted to show you there was when you click on sync, you'll basically get a dialog box come up which will say, do you want to synchronize your files? And then it will show you a local path. So it's essentially syncing to your C drive, okay, which is what we've got over here. You can then drag and drop them up. I've got them added into my favorites at the top here. You can rearrange them however you like, but that is how you would initially create that synchronization. Click the sync button and then click OK. You can change the location to which you save it locally if you want to. Once you've created that link, anytime that you make any changes to documents either in the portal or locally, it will synchronize with the other one, so it's always up to date. So it's really important that you do that step, that synchronize step. Now, as I said, if we go back to Word, I'm going to, or I did save it into my OneDrive for Business. So I just want to make sure that I can actually see that in here. So I saved it into my training demo files folder. And there we go. So you can see my document mars.doc is now accessible through the portal. So hopefully that illustrates to you, I could have saved that document when I'm in the office, when I'm using the full version at my desk, and then I could have gone home and later that night decide I want to update that document. I can log into my portal and there is my document which I can then open and update. Okay, so a really, really nice way of being able to work in a more mobile manner. So once we're in OneDrive, there's lots of different things that we can do with our documents and files. I'm just going to show you a few little things that you can do in OneDrive for those of you who aren't as familiar. So I've got my file list just here. If we just glance up to the navigation bar at the top, again, we've got a few little buttons. So we know what that synchronized one does. We've just been through that. But we also have a new button. So if we click the new drop down, I can choose to create a new folder. So if you want to kind of reorganize your files in here, you can create a folder structure within the online version as well. And you can create new documents. So I could create new Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint, OneNote notebooks directly from here as well if I wanted to, which is quite nice. I also have the option of uploading files. So if you've maybe created a document and saved it onto your desktop or saved it into My Documents, so you've saved it somewhere locally, you could upload it into the portal through here, either just the individual file or an entire folder if you wanted to. Okay, so just a few little options for you in there. Now, other options that you have with your documents, if I click on a document, so let's do the one that we just created. So if I click to highlight mars.doc, you'll see I then get a whole new list of options up here. And I also have a whole host of things I can do with this file located under these three little dots. So if I click those three little dots, you'll see I have lots of different things I can do with that document. The first two, I can choose to open it in Word Online or open it in Word. I've got two different options there, and I just want to make sure that you're clear on the difference between those two. So if I wanted to edit this document, I would need to make a choice as to whether I wanted to edit the document in Word Online or if I wanted to edit it in the full version of Word. If I just wanted to make maybe some minor changes, so maybe just some formatting changes or just simple things, maybe just spell check it, maybe I just want to read it, then I'd probably just open it in Word Online. However, if I wanted to do something that was a little bit more advanced, and two things that stand out in my mind would be something like if I wanted to do a mail merge or if I wanted to do some track changes, things like that, I'd be more inclined to open it in Word because the Word Online version, as we said at the start, is a slimmed down version of your full desktop applications. So let's have a look at Word Online because that's going to be the one that you're not familiar with. So I'm going to click on Open in Word Online. And also the great thing about this while that's opening is that I can open, view and work in Word essentially on any PC regardless of whether that PC has Word installed on it. And that's the good thing about the online versions is you can use it anywhere. You don't have to have Office installed on that PC. So here we go. This is Word Online. Looks fairly similar to the full version on first glance. We've got our ribbon structure that we all know and love running across the top. You will see that on some of the ribbons there's a lot less commands than what you would have in the regular version. The home ribbon is fairly similar. If I move across to insert, that's fairly similar as well. Page layout, a lot less options than what you would get in that full version. So as I said, the things that immediately come off my head not available would be things like track changes and mail merge, but I'm sure you'll find other things which you might need the full version for. I can then go in and I can edit my document. If I do decide at a certain point, or if I'm trying to do something which isn't available in this version, I can switch to the full version very simply by clicking the Open in Word button, and that will reopen that document in the full version of Word, which will then give me full access to all the ribbons and commands that I might need with that document. So nice and straightforward. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So you, as I said, you can come in here and you can make your changes as normal. Now another thing that is very different with the online version, and I don't know if you can see that as I kind of type at the top in the black bar, it's saying saving. It automatically saves as I make changes to this document. You'll notice if I click on File, there's no save button. There is a save as, so I could choose to save the document as something else, but if I'm just making changes to this document, there's no save button. Control S makes no difference as well, so it automatically saves any changes that I make to this document, which is really good. So let's just make a change, something along those lines, and that's automatically saving for me. I don't need to save. Okay, so that's the main difference. In the full version of Word, obviously you still need to do your Control S or your File Save or click the Save icon, whatever you need to do. Lovely. All right, so let's jump out of there, and I'm just going to close that document down, and we're going to go back to OneDrive. So that is opening and editing in Word Online. Another option that we have, which is really useful, is the share option. So this enables you to share your documents and collaborate with colleagues, team members, again, no matter where they are. And there's a few different options in here that I want to show you. So we've got, I'm going to click on Share. And we've got a couple of options here when it comes to sharing our documents. So by default, when you create a document, it's only shared with you. You can then give people access to that document. So I have two choices here. I can invite people, or I can choose this Get a Link option. Let's look at the invite people first of all. I can type in the name, and I'm going to use my pseudonym, Ryan Gosling. He's my buddy, lucky me. I'm going to type his name in there, and I can then say whether I want him to be able to edit that document or just view that document. So it really depends what you want them to do, what level of access you give them. I'm going to say that I'm going to allow Ryan to be able to edit that document, and I could type a message in here. This isn't necessary. What this is going to do is when I click share, it's essentially going to send an email to Ryan. It's going to say that I've shared a document. It's going to give him a link to the document, which he will then click on. You don't necessarily have to elaborate, but if you do want to add in something, you can. So I'm just going to say, hi Ryan, please see the updated document. Okay, so you can type a message if you want to. So by default, it will be ticked send an email invitation, so that's going to make sure that he receives that notification via email. And require sign-in, that's related to the portal. So if you want him to have to sign into the portal to access this document, then keep that ticked. If not, you can untick that and then just click share. And what you'll see, if you look over in the last column, in a moment when that shares, it will now say that I'm sharing that with Ryan Gosling in there. Okay. Now, again, if we just click on those three dots and go back to share, if I want to review all the people, because I might have shared this document with more than one person, you can just carry on typing names in and adjusting the level of access. I can see who I've shared that document with just by clicking on shared with at the bottom, and you can see that it's shared with myself and Ryan Gosling, and he can edit that document. If I decide I want to stop sharing with Ryan, I can again click the little drop down and I can click stop sharing just there to take that access away. So you very much control the level of access on your documents within OneDrive. So that is the invite people option. Now I generally tend to use that if there's just a few people that I'm sharing the document with. So maybe 3 or 4 work colleagues, I will use that invite people link. Really, really useful. However, sometimes it might be that you want to share a document with a lot of people, so maybe 30, 40, 50, or people who are in, that you've got in a distribution list in Outlook. I would generally, for that kind of thing, I would use the Get a Link option. Okay, now what this is, you'll see here, it gives a link to that particular document, and you can choose the level of access you want on that link. Again, by clicking the drop down, I can decide if I want people to be able to view it or edit it, if I want them to be able to sign in or not sign in, so on and so forth. So again, you have control over the amount of access to that document. I'm going to say I want them to be able to edit again, and no sign-in required. And all I would then do is copy that link and then paste it into an Outlook email. And I can then choose my group distribution list, whoever it is that I want to send that to. So that's a better option if you're sending to large groups of people. And I'm just going to click close. Okay, so that is sharing your documents with others. Really, really nice and straightforward. Again, if you've had documents that have been shared with you, so if other people have shared documents with you, there is a really nice, quick way of being able to see all those documents at a glance. And if you just put your eyes over to the left-hand menu again, you'll see underneath where it says Files and Recent, you've got a Shared With Me option. And if we click on Shared With Me, that is where no one shared any files with me. How sad. That is where you'll find a list of all the files that other people have shared with you. Okay, so nice and straightforward. So just clicking back, let me just jump back into my demo files. So that's your shared options. Just quickly moving through, because the rest of these are fairly self-explanatory, there is a download link, so if you want to download that document, maybe to save it onto your C drive, you can do that. The delete option, now deleting files. When you delete a document in OneDrive, it doesn't delete, shall we say. It goes into the recycle bin, and you have access to that recycle bin again in that same menu on the left-hand side where it says recycle bin just here. This is where all of your documents that you've deleted will be stored, and they're by default stored for 90 days. Now, sometimes organizations change that, so again, it depends what your organization has that set to, but it's by default around 90 days. So you have 90 days in order to be able to retrieve your document from the recycle bin. For example, if I wanted to retrieve this one just here, I could select it and just do restore selection, and that will put that document back into the folder that it was deleted from. So 90-day limit there for those. So that's quite a nice option as well. And click back on our three dots, so that's deleting. We then have move to, so this is really just for moving or copying to different folders within OneDrive. I can rename the file if I want to change that to something else. And I also have a version history button. And again, this is a nice little button. It's version control in OneDrive. So let's click on version history. It will show you all the versions of that particular document. So if you remember, I made some changes to that document. So we now have 2 versions. So OneDrive has automatically saved a second version for me. So this first version will be the first version of the document I created, and the second version will be with my changes. So I added that line of text into that document, so that's what will be in that second version. So if for some reason I wanted to roll back to the previous version, I can do that very easily just by hovering over, clicking that drop down, and in the world's tiniest box there is a restore option there, so that will then allow me to restore that first version. Okay, so version control is also included in OneDrive. Hopefully you're seeing sort of some of the advantages of storing your files in OneDrive for Business. That's pretty much all I'm going to cover in OneDrive. Hopefully that's given you a little bit more information. Maybe you've learned some things you didn't know so much about OneDrive. I'm going to move on very swiftly to just talking a little bit about SharePoint. So let's just jump back to our waffle. And SharePoint, I'm going to touch on this very, very briefly. Again, let me just pull up a slide, which I think is quite nice for you to be able to see. Now, on our previous slide, we said that SharePoint is for teams, so team documents, team sites, but it's also used for lots of different other things, and really it depends kind of what your organization wants to use SharePoint for. So I've got some of the things that SharePoint can be used for sort of in this little infographic just here. So some people or some organizations that I've seen use it simply very similar to OneDrive as just another place to store documents for teams. So it's more like having, for example, if you work in the HR team, you might have a SharePoint site called HR, and that's where all of your HR documents go, and that's shared just amongst the people who are in HR. So some people use it as document storage. You can also use SharePoint for company intranet. So a lot of companies will use SharePoint to essentially design their intranet. There's lots of design options within there which you can use to make really, really nice looking intranet sites. So some people use it for that. It can be used for document collaboration. So if you do store documents in SharePoint, there's lots of document collaboration options within there as well, which you'll see in a moment. And again, very similar to OneDrive, some of these options. You can share documents within SharePoint with team members. You can create team project sites. So again, if, let's take that example of the HR department. So if maybe within that HR department of 30 people, 5 of them are working on a specific project, you could create a team site in SharePoint and just give access to those 5 people. And SharePoint also allows us to have some control over document versioning. So all of these things cross over with OneDrive for Business, but SharePoint does have a few more uses to it. And just very briefly going to show you how you access SharePoint from the portal as well. Let's click on the waffle and click on Sites. This is where your SharePoint sites will live. So I have a few sites that I follow, and again you can do things like, so if there's sites set up within your organization, you can follow certain sites if they're of particular interest, and you can see here I've got some sites that I'm following. I'm just going to click on Team Site. And I haven't customized this at all. It looks very, very plain. So this is where if I'd customize this, which I could do through some of these tiles, I might have it branded in my company colors. I might have my company logo up here instead of the SharePoint logo. You really can kind of go to town in SharePoint and really design it and make it look how you would want. I'm really just using this as a place to store documents. So you can see down here I have a document which I've saved into SharePoint, and I could use this side menu to click on documents just to see I've got one document stored into SharePoint. Again, saving documents into SharePoint, you must synchronize first. So if you remember when we went into OneDrive, we had to synchronize so that it synchronized back to File Explorer. You would do the same for SharePoint. So you can see here I have SharePoint synchronized as well. And if we look at SharePoint in the portal, there is a sync button in there as well, which will set up that link. So if SharePoint is something that you use, it's worth synchronizing so you can have easy access to your documents. SharePoint is slightly different to OneDrive in the way that if I select my document just here, I have 3 tabs at the top, and that gives me access to all of my different options for my documents. As I said, I'm not going to go into this too much. I will leave you to have a little play around in your own time, but there's lots of useful things which you might want to use within SharePoint, such as this Alert Me functionality, which some people really love. You can set alerts on particular documents in SharePoint, so if somebody, maybe a colleague or somebody else edits that document, you are immediately informed that they've edited that document. So it's quite good if you're trying to keep on top of any changes to any critical documents. So you can do things like that in SharePoint. As I said, I'll leave it for you to have a little browse around, but your SharePoint can be accessed through the Sites tile in the Office 365 portal. And finally, just to finish up the session, because that's almost an hour up, thank you for your attention. I know it's quite a lot of information to take in all in one go, but I just very quickly want to highlight to you a little application called Microsoft Sway, which may or may not be something that you've heard of. I really love this little application. It's so underutilized, and it's a really nice way of just presenting information. It's a nice alternative to PowerPoint. And there's some really nice things that you can do with it. So again, I'll just very briefly show you, and if that piques your interest, I would encourage you to kind of go away, have a play around with it, look at some tutorials maybe. It's quite a simple little application. So again, from that waffle, we're just going to select Sway. And it will take you to this page here. So you can see the one that I did last week, the solar system is just there. And there's some examples. I'm just going to show you an example first of all so you can sort of get an idea of what you're creating. So let's just do an example of this one here. So somebody did a sway on climbing Mount Rainier. So I'm going to click on it. Okay, so that's taken me in. I can now edit this, but I just want to play it first of all. You'll see there's a play button at the top. So if I click play, this will just show you what it looks like, the finished version. So if I scroll to the right, there's information. So it's just a nice way of presenting information that's just a little bit different to PowerPoint. And there's different kinds of effects. This is a fairly basic one that we're using, a lot of pictures, a little bit of text. So presenting text either as a presentation or just as a document in general, just a little bit different. So you can use Sway to create presentations which look something similar to this, which can be quite nice. Let's just come out of there. And I'm just going to go back to the home page of Sway. So if, for example, you wanted to create your own Sway from scratch, you've got a little Create New button in the top right-hand corner. And this is where you are now presented with the storyline, so you can start to build up your Sway and insert text, pictures, headings, videos, tweets, whatever you want to insert. And you'll see down the side, I'm currently clicked on cards, and this is showing me, so these are little blocks that you can drag into your Sway. So for example here, I've already got a block in there. It's saying I can add a background image and I can add a title to my Sway. Again, if I was doing the solar system, I could type that up there. And then I might decide I want to add a little background image, so I can click on background. And what it will allow me to do from here is when you want to add an image, this little pane will open at the side and I can now search across numerous different sources for images. So in this little drop down, I get options of where I can search. So I might want to search on Bing, and somebody asked the question last week, can we search on Google? You don't get that option in here. Just remember that the Bing is Microsoft's internet browser, and so Bing is the option that you get. So if you want to search the internet for a picture of the solar system, you would need to select Bing in there, and then I could type the solar system and click search, and then that basically does a Bing search, produces images, and I can then drag and drop those images into my Sway essentially. So it just allows you to bring in content from different sources. If I click cards again, I then might want to add some text, so I could add my text block underneath there, and I could start typing some text, whatever I want to do. I could add video by adding the video block, and again, if I click on add video, I then go in and I could do things like search YouTube for a video of the solar system. And then I could drag and drop that into my Sway just to build that up. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of things that you can do. It's definitely worth having a little play around. There's lots of things you can do. You can embed tweets, charts, text, headings, all different kinds of things, photographs, and you can modify the design as well. So again, just using your navigation bar at the top, we've got different ways that we can present the design, change our navigation, so on and so forth. So just another way, a nice little application that I wanted to show you just simply because it's there and not a lot of people use it. Now our hour is up. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of a better understanding of Office 365 kinds of things that you can do with it. I would encourage you just to kind of log on, remember through office.com, log in, install your 5 installs across your devices at home, wherever you are. It's always good having the full versions of Office across your devices, and have a little play around with it, start using it. Hand across to Alan now. Are there any questions?
Hi Deb, yeah, we've got 2 questions. The first is,
Yep.
What is the difference between Office 365 and the Office Home and Business 2013 that I currently have? Any ideas?
It's the same thing essentially. Office 365 is a brand name, and I think if you go onto the Microsoft site or Office 365 site, you'll see the differences there. 365 is the brand name. There are numerous different flavors, shall we say, of 365. So you'll have, there's a home version of Office 365, there's a personal version, there is about I think 4 or 5 different business versions of Office 365. So it really depends kind of which version you're using. So they do differ slightly. So if you're using business, and the ones that I've been, or what I've been demonstrating today, I have the business version downloaded. I think I have a Pro Plus on mine. So if you have the home version, it's going to be pretty similar. There might be a few things which you don't have that I have, but pretty much the same. So it is Office 365. It's just a different flavors of Office 365. Does that answer your question?
That's great, thanks. And the last one is from Lynn. It's our Wi-Fi is really bad as it's a rural location. Is OneDrive a good option for us as a business because of this?
With regards to, I mean, the thing about OneDrive is that, you know, if you are in a location that has bad Wi-Fi, one of the things I like about it is that you can work offline. So if you have, for example, back across so you can see, I'm just going to jump back to OneDrive. So for example, say I was in your location, I've got my files here, I'm working away. As long as I've got these synchronized locally, so as long as I've done the synchronization and I have my files here, if I was to lose Wi-Fi connection, what I will see here is, I don't know if you can see on my screen, all of these documents have a little green tick next to them. If I was to lose Wi-Fi connection or internet connection, they would have little red crosses next to them. I can still open those documents, I can still work on those documents, but they won't synchronize back until I've reestablished my Wi-Fi connection. So essentially you can still work as long as you've got it synchronized, and it just won't update back to the portal until that Wi-Fi connection is reestablished. But for the most part, I mean, if you've got a bad Wi-Fi wherever you are, I mean, I think that's probably going to be a problem with most most applications you're trying to use that rely on the internet. Does that answer your question?
That's great, thanks. Okay, well, thank you very much for presenting the webinar. That's absolutely great. And just before we go, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping as well. If you've got any further questions, please do send us them through at info@webinars team, or alternatively hello@filter.com, and obviously we'll get back to you with the answers as quickly as we can. We've had a few people ask about webinar slides, so just to remind you that they will be sent out in a follow-up email around about an hour's time after the session ends, so keep an eye out for that. If you'd like to re-watch the webinar or share it with friends, colleagues, we do record all of them, so it'll be available on our website learn.filtered.com/webinars within around 24 hours, so just check it about this time tomorrow. You can also register for any of our upcoming webinars there, so have a look and see what's coming up. If you're interested in speaking to one of our team about our digital collaboration in Office 365 course, which basically it teaches you all the facts and features about Office 365 in a structured format, then please do get in touch with us at sales@filter.com. We're also happy to talk about any other of our courses or just delivering you a personalised learning experience in general. You can also call us on 0207 729 9043. But that's everything from me. So just a reminder to say that our next webinar is on the 19th of May. That's a Thursday at 4:30 p.m. and that's Make the Most of Pivot Tables, and that again will be with Deborah. But until then, thanks for joining us and have a fantastic evening. Lovely. Take care. Bye.
Muted.